Hello and welcome. This presentation, Generational Management, is brought to you by the Office of Formation and Discipleship within the Catholic Archdiocese of Atlanta. Hello and welcome. My name is Bill Clark and I will be the presenter for this program. If you have questions or desire additional information, you can contact me on my direct line at 404-920-7635 or by email at wclark@archatl.com. Let's open with a generational compatibility prayer. Dear God, you made man in your image and likeness. Let us remember, as your created ones, to learn how to live and work together more peacefully, regardless of age, background, ethnic, or cultural differences, so that we give honor to your creation. Allow us to see one another's strengths and areas of common interest, and to minimize our differences and weaknesses. Remind us always that everything we do is our prayer and thanksgiving for all that you have given to us. We ask your blessings on all generations, young and old. In your name we pray. Amen. The objective of the program is to learn how generational differences influence a person's behavior on the job and elsewhere. There's a workplace reality in our contemporary work environment today. We can have as many as 5 different generations working together. They consist of the silent generation, those born between 1925 and 45, the baby boomers, 1946 to 64, Generation X, 1965 to 1982, Generation Y, the millennials from 1983 to 2000, and Generation Z, the latest generation, the late 90s up until now. These characteristics are not only seen on the job, but also elsewhere throughout our life. So let's learn how we can understand and better cope with these. Let me give you one example why knowing the characteristics of different generations will be helpful in the workplace. It's from an article entitled Millennial Bosses Overwhelmingly Prefer Online Messaging over Face-to-Face Communication. Is your boss a millennial? If so, chances are they prefer communicating with you online more than any other method. New research from global organizational consulting firm Korn Ferry found that when it comes to communication, 55% of survey respondents said that millennial managers mostly get their message across to their employees via online messaging, while only 14% chose to do so in person, much different than prior generations. 37% of respondents said older managers, like those in Generation X and the boomers, believe that they work harder than their millennial bosses. This is good information for everyone to know in the workplace. Let's take a look at what we'll cover during this session, our agenda. First, we already covered the objective. Then I'll provide you with 2 important caveats leading into the presentation. Then an overview of each of the generations, followed by a management perspective on generational differences, personal and lifestyle characteristics of each generation, workplace characteristics of the generations, then examples of generational differences. We'll discuss multi-generational suggestions, questions to ask yourself. We'll look at 5 generations working side by side in today's workplace. Then we'll end or close with a look into the future. Let me make you aware of our first caveat. There is no consensus on the birth year ranges between generations. Different surveys, different groups come up with relatively close, but not necessarily the same agreement on all generational birth dates. Next, these generational characteristics are not categorical. Material presents a generalized perspective. Conclusions may apply to some or most within a generation, but not necessarily to everyone within the generation. Consider them as guidelines, not mandates. Caveat number 2. Everyone within each generation has bias. We are a product of our heredity and environment. We can't help being the way we are. Our way of doing things is ingrained, instinctive. We tend to think our way is the best way. We expect everyone to conform to our way. The reality is, everyone within each generation, must adjust our bias to consider and accommodate other generations. Let's do an overview of each generation, starting with the silent generation. The silent generation is referred to as the traditionalists, born between 1925 and 1945, which means that they're now in their 70s to 90s. Included in this group would be Martin Luther King, Justice Ruth B. Ginsburg, and Pope John Paul II. Why silent? Well, this generation was born into a world that was in crisis. World War II, the Great Depression. The youth deferred to their elders. It was common that children were to be seen and not heard. They have a strong work ethic and commitment. The values shaped by the Great Depression, World War II, and the post-World War II boom. The bottom line is that this generation, the silents, are hardworking, loyal, they respect authority, they're very conservative, they are well-mannered, they're extremely patriotic, and many of them are veterans. That's the silent generation. Next, let's take an overview of the baby boomer generation. Baby boomers are referred to as the me generation. For many, it's all about me. Born between 1946 and 1964, which places them in their mid-50s to 70s. Included in this group would be former President Bill Clinton, Oprah Winfrey, Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, and President Donald Trump. It's the largest generation in history to date, 78 million strong. The values were shaped by being brought up during the Civil Rights era, Vietnam, inflation, anti-war protest, anti-establishment, the creation and use of credit. 63% will work in retirement by choice. Simply, they like to work. 5% will never retire. 46% have less than $10,000 in their savings. They have a me attitude. They want things now. It's the first college generation to accept college as an expectation, almost as a birthright. The bottom line is that the boomers have a very strong work ethic, the desire for affluence, personal gratification, to be politically correct, highly competitive, and it's all about me. The next generation is Generation X, commonly referred to as the latchkey generation. I'll get into that in a moment. Born between 1965 and 1982, which means they're now in their mid-30s to early 50s. Included in this group would be Bruce Springsteen, Tiger, former President Obama, the author J.K. Rowling. Why latchkey? These kids growing up were provided with a key to get into the home after school. They had reduced adult supervision because many came from families with dual income parents. A large percentage spend a great amount of time alone, unsupervised, the latchkey generation. The values shaped by the evolution from an analog to a digital world. Immigration, women's rights, environmental issues, and the loneliness of growing up without parents supervising a major amount of your time. They seek work-life balance. Work is relative. Unlike the boomers, work to them is something that they have to do. The bottom line is that some refer to them as slackers. Not all, but some. They're cynical, diverse, individualistic, independent. They're very highly technology adaptive, and they seek life balance between all of the facets of their life. Next we have Generation Y, the millennials. Born between 1983 and 2000, they're now in their early 20s to mid-30s. Included in this group is soccer star Messi, Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, Beyonce, Jordan Spieth, the golfer. Their values are shaped by the new millennium, the rapid growth in technology, instant communication, terrorism, 911, school and community shootings and bombings, the Gulf Wars, and social media rise and addiction. They appreciate and tolerate diversity and inclusion. They're the most educated generation where college became a necessity. The bottom line is that they learn to become multitaskers. They're team players, they're tech savvy, they're well connected, they desire instant gratification, they are inclusive, they are travelers, they're change adaptable, highly patriotic, desire experiences more so than material possessions. The millennials. And finally, the last of our generations, Generation Z, the digital natives, or the iGen, born between 1999 and 2016, places them mostly in their teen years. They're young, have hip Role models like Smosh, PewDiePie, Alex Dunphy from Modern Family, Kendall and Kylie, the youngest of the Kardashians. Their identity is not yet established. The values shaped by the war on terror, same-sex marriages, the Obama presidency, student loan debt, cyberbullying, and reality TV. They have a very short attention span. 96% own smartphones, 50% are online 10 hours a day, spend 4 hours on social media. They don't play outside. They are gamers. They have almost instinctive technical skills. They want to make a positive impact on the world. The bottom line is they are eco-conscious, highly educated, they're digital, independent, global, unafraid, they are change agents, they're highly diverse, they're eco-friendly, persistent, driven, ambitious realist, innovative, self-aware, self-reliant, innovative, and goal-oriented. That's Generation Z. Keep your eye on Generation Z. The Zers do not remember a time before social media. They absorb and discard information instantaneously. They prefer anonymous online privacy, vehicles like Snapchat versus Facebook. A major concern, 50% say church involvement is not important. 34% do not believe that lying is morally wrong. 1 in 3 claim they are atheist, agnostic, or a none, having no religion. Morality is relative. Relativism prevails. Happiness is their ultimate goal in life. 33% say gender is what you feel, not your birth sex. Their views on religion, cultural inclusion, global peace, eco-friendliness, personal choice, and technology will shape the future world. Keep your eye on Generation Z. Let's talk about generational differences. What triggered generational differences in the first place? In a nutshell, it was the influence of rapidly evolving societal trends in a relatively short period of time. There are several of them. For instance, the pace of change. We've gone from the horse and buggy era to spacewalks in less than a century. Next, our communications methods and speed of communications has increased dramatically from telegraph to telephone to smartphone. Next, information automation. We've gone from the pencil to the computer. Next, information accessibility. We've gone from the encyclopedia era to internet access. Number 5, family structure transformation. We've gone from the traditional family, mother, father, father being the breadwinner, mother being the homemaker, to the modern era with 70% of families with dual income parents. Lots of change in a relatively short period. Let's continue with generational difference triggers. Next is changing morality standards. We've gone from a highly puritanical and personal environment to a point where morality is relative. Women's movement. We've gone from the homemaker, mother at home, to career women, including CEO level positions. Political polarization. We've gone from a highly conservative country and world to a liberal environment. Civil rights, integration, entitlement, multicultural. We've gone from an almost closed society to a far more open, not totally open, but moving in that direction. Gender identity. We've gone from a simple male-female awareness to an LGTB environment. Altogether, these societal trends systematically shaped generational tendencies and differences, since we in each generation are a part of our environment and our heredity. That's why we are different. How to remember the personal and lifestyle characteristics of each generation? It's very difficult. So here's a handy pocket reference that you can use to try to remember the characteristics between the generations. This quick reference guide will help you understand and remember the differences between each generation in the workplace. Keep it handy, use it as a guide when issues come up so that you can better understand what motivates and drives each generation. Now let's get into some examples of generational differences, or how generational differences affect the management process in the workplace. First example, a silent generation manager gives a bonus to a Gen Xer at year end for a project completed 6 months prior. Good idea or not? No. Generation Xers want instant gratification. Give the bonus when the project is done. Don't wait. Silents, on the other hand, like and accept bonuses at any time. One example of how generational differences affect the management process. Example number 2. A Gen Xer boss tells a boomer to stop working so hard. Take some time off. Good idea or not? No. Boomers tend to be workaholics. They work for the sake of work. Give them a bonus, not time off. Pat them on the back. That's what they want. Example number 3. Multi-generational team tasked with the challenge of solving a big corporate problem. The manager decides what to do, how to communicate, how people should work. Good idea or not? No. Each generation prefers different approaches. The silents want specific requests in writing. The boomers expect meetings, dialogue, and additional input. The Xers don't want meetings or contact after work hours. The Yers don't need to meet, but they want communications electronically. So you need to spend time up front learning how each group prefers to work and communicate. Example number 4. A boomer reports to a Generation Yer, a millennial. The Generation Y manager experiences almost instant frustration and animosity. The boomer doesn't like to report to a younger manager. Good idea or not to have a boomer reporting to a millennial? No. Try to have boomers report to other boomers or to silence. What are the lessons we can learn from these examples? First, there are, in fact, differences between generations and the work preferences. You have to take differences into consideration when planning and organizing tasks, because different generations prefer to work and communicate in different ways. When in doubt, ask each generation for their opinion on how to proceed. The next 2 slides contain 10 suggestions to use in helping to create a more compatible work environment for all generations. First, encourage younger associates to seek the experience and wisdom from older associates. Create mentoring roles to bring the older together with the younger generations. Next, focus on results rather than process. Everyone can more easily understand and agree with the results, although they might differ on how to go about accomplishing it. 3. Less time on where and when someone works. Does it really matter if they work at home on a complicated project where they need, quiet time? Consider doing things like that to break from the traditional way of working. Number 4, tone down rigid work rules with younger associates. Provide them with more freedom. And as number 3 suggests, don't be concerned about where or when they worked. Focus on getting the job done. Continuing with the suggestions. Reevaluate the effectiveness of routine scheduled meetings. You don't have to eliminate meetings, but make sure that the meetings are organized, effective, and not too long. Next, assign more work to teams. People like to work in teams, and they tend to get more done quicker. Next, recognize accomplishments quickly and appropriately to help build morale and teamwork. Next, accommodate varying personal needs. For instance, if one of the people on a team has a problem with their child at home in terms of babysitting or what have you, be flexible. Allow them to come in later and perhaps work a little bit later to help get things done. Next, give everyone a voice. There's nothing wrong with asking everyone their ideas on how to do something. They will work better and harder to get it done. And lastly, don't use a blanket communication process. Recognize that each generation might prefer a different way to communicate. Use all of these suggestions as a way to help improve the work environment for all generations. One more suggestion. Adjust your personal generational bias. Since we all have an instinctive feeling about how things should be done, we have to recognize that other members of the organization or team might have a different view on how to do things. Don't always think that your way is the best way. Be sure to listen. Measure by results, quality, and timeliness, not by your personal generational bias. Questions to ask yourself. Acknowledge that each generation has its own preferences, expectations, and strengths. Ask yourself these 5 questions. Number 1, do I understand how to communicate with each team member of a multi-generational team? Am I doing enough to help each generation work together? Is the current environment that I've created conducive to a multi-generation success? Have I provided training or activities that promote improved working relationships amongst generations? Do I understand what motivates each team member? Ask yourself these 5 questions and learn from them the areas in which you need to improve. In summary, let me read the following quote. Managing a workplace made up of several generations presents unique challenges, but also a great many advantages. If carefully crafted, the different viewpoints of each generation merge to create exciting ideas and unique solutions. The journey to a highly functioning, multi-generational workplace begins with the manager. Asking and honestly answering the 5 questions empowers all members of a team to contribute to their maximum potential. It is important that we face the reality in today's work environment that we could have as many as 5 generations working together. The traditionalists, the silents, the boomers, the Generation X, the millennials, and the Generation Z. It's here to stay. We'd better learn how to deal with it. A look into the future. Multi-generational environment is here to stay. Managing will become even more challenging as ethnic population increases, multiculturalism increases, and Generation Z comes on board. Be aware, focus on the strengths, be willing to adapt and change. If you have any questions or desire additional information, you can contact me, Bill Clark, on my direct line at 404-920-7635 or by email at wclark@archatl.com. Thank you, gracias. Also, thank you very much for your time and commitment to improving your personal and professional skills. Good luck and God bless you.